the assignment or prepping up for the assignment when you do need to submit. So
Yes,
just
sir.
1 second and I will share my screen again and we'll make a start. Just pressing record so that, yeah, there we go. Now, let me just share my screen. So what we'll do is we'll make a start. Right. So first of all, quickly, a couple of things which I want to share with you. So I hope, I know, Daniel, you joined midway between this session, but you could also contribute. Feel free to give us any comments. But obviously, from Shaima,
Yes,
your
sir.
point of view, we've covered this unit now roughly, with looking at all the learning outcomes 1 to 5. And what we've also seen is that, there is a fair bit of content which is required to be covered in this unit. So were you okay with the delivery, the speed at which we've gone, and have you been able to do some additional reading as we've gone along?
Yeah, sure. Like I have went through learning outcome 1 and 2. I have done some research on the internet and I have looked at the slides. But honestly, I have been through the book slightly, not too much, but because I found it really stuffed,
Yeah, I think that there is sometimes I'll be honest here, sometimes what we do see is that most learners actually go through our presentations because they are quite extensive and they are quite worded. So they typically
Yes,
tend to
exactly.
give you more or less, I would say 70 to
Precise
80%,
information.
yeah,
Yeah.
precise information, 70 to 80% of it. And
Mm.
that allows you to, go into and obviously look at, for additional reading, specifically when you start doing your assignment, that is when we actually see a lot of learners actually going in and, doing their maybe a bit of reading to ensure that they are able to, write up the content which is required. Because sometimes it's a case in point that you have to study some of this by searching for content on the internet, but getting it from the books generally makes it easier because of the fact that you're not plagiarizing or you're not looking at similarity in terms of the content. So I think the main part is that if you tag along and obviously attend some of these sessions, it makes it easier for you to grasp, I would say, 80% of the content of the unit. And then when you need some specifics or if you need a bit more detail, then the articles and the case study or some of the links that I do provide, come in quite handy. And then at a later stage, if you want to dig deeper, obviously they will give you 95% of the information. But sometimes if you want to look at the very latest and look at reading into some of the latest trends and development, then in that case, it is obviously at some stage down to the students to be able to do a bit of research themselves. And that research could essentially come from, books, articles, journals, case studies, presentations, whichever way you look at it. And obviously some bit of additional reading that you can do, which is through the website and the ebooks that we've provided. Now, the ebooks that we've provided are basically books recommended by the awarding body. So in this case, obviously, these are not generic books, but these are books which, we have created and we have bought over the years. And we do feel that they cover the content of the unit quite well. And that is why they have been, obviously listed from a point of view of ensuring that you have them available and you don't need to go start looking outside for the content, especially related to your assignments.
Mm.
Now,
Regarding yeah, I want to ask you
yeah.
regarding learning outcome 3, 4, and 5. In the book, where this can be, where can I find these learning outcomes material?
Okay, so I will get you some idea on that as well as we go along and
Okay.
discuss. It's a good thing that you're asking. I will have to look through and obviously give you some idea in terms of what could be the relevant chapters, because sometimes these books are quite generic books. And what we do get to see is that in some cases, there might not be content which is directly related to it. And just like university, when you have to do a bit of research and reading about, that could be the case. That could be required in the case of some of the tasks as well. So I would obviously give you some idea and indication in terms of what are the pages that you can look at. So we will go into that also. Just very other briefly, one last thing. when I show you there is a presentation that I have created, which obviously looks at, the discussion, giving you some outlines at least from a point of view of, discussions which are required to be done. And these, would be essentially related to the tasks that are given in the assignment brief. So here, obviously, I would show you in a second that sometimes when you look at these tasks are essentially related to the assessment criteria and the learning outcomes which have been given. And what they then do, when I say they, I mean the awarding bodies, they do is they basically then convert these tasks into what are called, the learning outcomes into what are called tasks. And here is where you need to be able to compile the evidence which is required for the purposes of writing up the assignment. And these assignments that you do submit at some stage would be then marked. There'll be obviously guidance provided to you in terms of formative feedback, which would hopefully allow you to improve the work. And the improvement of the work then allows you to achieve any, if there are any gaps or any areas where we feel that the evidence that you've provided is weak or is not meeting the required, standards, then in those cases, we'll give you that feedback, and that feedback allows you to redress your work. And that redressing of work gives you also the opportunity to hit the grade that you are looking at in each of these units. Now, there is an overall grading criteria, as this is the first assignment discussion, just very briefly mentioning one or two other things. As this is a graded qualification, each of the units that you're going to study have pass, merit, and distinction grades. But it might not be necessary because sometimes the units are difficult, or the content or evidence required to be produced is a bit difficult. But what you will generally see is that in some cases, even if you don't achieve the highest grade, as long as you're keeping an eye out on the point and the scoring, point based on the scoring system, what it will allow you to do is if you achieve, say, 3 units with distinction, 1 with merit, 1 with pass, your overall grade might be merit for the diploma, because it's actually all based on some sort of numbering and calculations, which I'll also explain so that you are clear. And sometimes if the units are tough, like the programming units or the mobile phone application units, I'm not saying and I'm not discouraging that you should not aim for higher grades, but sometimes it could be a case in point wherein you would essentially feel that, if I put in so much effort and I'm still not able to make the grade, then the best thing in this case would be for me to look at putting my attention on other units wherein I can gain distinction, and they at some stage would then allow you to still make the overall grade of merit or distinction in the diploma. And having that higher grade also, you have to keep in mind, requires you to do that bit of additional work, which is what I would say, is burning the midnight oil or looking at additional reading or putting in the efforts, going that extra mile, which shows that the work that you're putting in is obviously different, and it shows the efforts that you have put in with regards to reaching that grade or hitting that grade. So it is in some cases also going to be related to what I now say literally is that sometimes in certain tasks you have to look at taking live examples, and sometimes in certain tasks you have to look at after talking about the example, you also need to be able to show the application of that, which basically gives a very clear idea to the assessor and the tutor that yes, the student has working knowledge of what the task is asking it to do. And that is why it is absolutely necessary to look at in higher order merit words or command verbs that we have, which is assess, analyze, or evaluate or critically evaluate. These words typically would require the application as well as the example to be included for you to go into the higher grade achieving criteria. So a couple of things that we would be looking at it as we start the discussion today would be to pay attention on the command verbs. And command verbs are the verbs or words essentially which define what the task is asking you to do, or what is the evidence the task is asking you to compile. And keeping that in mind, if you always create your evidence, then in such cases, your chances of hitting the higher grades tend to be, quite likely. So in such cases, what I would suggest, and I'm going to show you an example, that I would suggest that you make sure that you pay emphasis on what the task is asking and what kind of evidence it is asking you to produce, and basis that your chances of scoring higher grades would absolutely increase. Now, one last thing which I would mention here is, generically speaking, without showing this to you right now, but verbally, is that what you would also keep in mind is that there is, uh, so this is like a caveat in the sense that writing, you need to be able to start to hit a balance wherein you understand how much of writing is too much and how much writing is too less. That means you need to strike a balance in terms of understanding how much you need to write, and in some cases, what is it that you are required to write, because that would allow you to put things into context with regards to decreasing similarity or in decreasing plagiarism. Because if you end up writing a 10,000 word assignment, it is going to be good, but it will also increase your chances of similarity going up on that side. Now, one last thing which I want to mention in terms of our discussion is that there are a certain bits of certain types of things that we would request that you follow through when you do look at doing the assignment, simply because this would be making it easier also on the assessors to mark your assignment and obviously send that work or feedback back to you quite quickly, which would mean that at any given stage you would then essentially get the turnaround quite quickly with regards to the assignment or the feedback on the assignment. So let's start. Without further ado, let's make a quick start, and I'll take you along in this presentation wherein I'll start showing you some of the things which I feel are going to be important as far as the assignment brief is concerned. Now, this and I presume that both of you are actually, hopefully attending this on the laptop, or you have a big enough screen, because what I want to do is actually show you the full desktop. And in this context, I want to show everything together. What is it that makes the assignment, and why is it that, this is important for us to understand in this context. Now, there are 4 documents which I'll show you. And let me order them in a way wherein they are clear. So let me just make some space. Okay, now what you see on my screen is basically 4 documents. The reason I've got these 4 documents on my screen is I want to make sure that you understand, because it's the first discussion on assignment. And I'll go back to individual screens and individual documents, but just give you a holistic picture. So when you look at doing an assignment, there are 3 things which I would suggest that you have at your hand, and you can make some notes if you want to. Now, the first thing that we always refer to when we do the study of the unit is what is called the unit specification. And this is a document which comes in quite handy, simply because this document tells us exactly what is required to be studied, and this is called the US as I'm writing it. So US means unit specification. It gives us very clearly number of learning outcomes. It tells us what are the assessment criteria that we are going to be looking at. They get converted into what are called tasks at the end of the day, but we'll be very clearly looking at what are the assessment criteria in the unit, how many learning outcomes are there. And then towards the end, this page, beyond that grid, actually shows you the indicative content, and they tell you exactly what all is required to be covered in terms of learning this particular unit. Now, the important bit that I want to highlight is that when you look at the tasks which are given here, if I say the tasks which are given here, the way they are worded individually, they are going to be exactly the same wordings of these tasks when you see them in the assignment brief. There won't be an iota of difference. It says, explain the importance of understanding cybersecurity. It says the same, explain the importance of understanding cybersecurity in the organization. Now, in these tasks, the key point that we want to look at is that there is something which is a word which starts the task off, which says explain. describe, in this case, evaluate. Now, if I were to delete this word evaluate for a minute, and you read this task now, it says a range of security attacks and identify areas for improvement. Now, if I look at deleting this particular task word, which is explain, it says the advantages of understanding hackers' mindset, right? Now, a command verb is a word which essentially tells you what is the action required to be done or what is the evidence that you need to create. Now, if you delete the command verb, you would not know what the task is asking you to do. It becomes a bit, I would say, ambiguous. Now, if I look at another task here, just to give you an idea, and if I magnify this particular document to make it absolutely clear, and if I look at now this particular task that I'm going to be talking about, say in this case here, it says, let me just still get rid of all the lines. So here, if it says outline and you read the task without this particular word, it says the different types of malware that exist. Now, I can understand it says the different type of malware that exists, but what is it to be done? Do I need to explain? Do I need to describe? Do I need to analyze them? Do I need to list them? What do I need to do? So if you would see across the unit specification, anything on the grid which is given, you would always have a word which will tell you what is to be done. It will say identify legislation. So if I delete identify and read the sentence, legislation related to cybersecurity, yes, it is asking. I can understand in English it says legislation related to cybersecurity. So I need to talk about Data Protection Act. I need to talk about Computer Misuse Act. I need to talk about Communication Act, Freedom of Information Act. But what do I need to do in this task? I won't be clear. Do I need to write it? Do I need to describe it? Do I need to give an example? What do I need to do? So
You
these
need to
words are quite
identify.
important, and they tell you how much you need to write with some sort of an ideation on this. I can give you some guidance to say if there's an explain, there's a describe, there's a define command verb, then you need to be able to write 50 to 75 words. But if it's something called describe or outline, or it'll say, for example, explain in detail or explain in depth, then your reasoning and the answer on the evidence needs to be about 100 to 125 words. If it comes out to be assess, it comes out to be analyze, it comes out to be evaluate, then in such cases you're writing between 200 to 225 words because these are higher order verbs. And you normally see that there will be only a certain types of words here. There'll be a certain type of word here and the certain type of words in the distinction column. Distinction column will always have analyze, critically evaluate, compare and contrast. These would require you to write more or create more evidence because they would be requiring justification. Like, for example, you need to put arguments, you need to put positive and negative points, advantages, disadvantages, maybe in some cases, then take an example and show the application of that example or theoretical framework. So the most important thing which I want to highlight is that when you look at the unit specification and when you look at the assignment brief, they are exactly the same in terms of wording of the tasks. Now, why is an assignment brief and why can't we use unit specification for doing the assignment? The most important thing you need to understand is that I have experience, I know, and I can write examples, I can use context in terms of examples, and I can include that as evidence in my assignment. But there are sometimes learners who do not have experience or working knowledge of the subject. And in such cases, the awarding body, what it does is it creates an assignment brief. And in that, it gives you a bit of a scenario to assume. Because if you're not working practically, you're not in work experience, then in such cases, they would need to give you a context that assume this and then do these tasks which are given to you as if they've been given to you by supervisor or your manager. So the assignment scenario can be useful because you can actually stitch it as an example in your assignment. You don't need to look at organizations or example organizations because if the scenario is given, a company is given, an organization is given, it is just simple enough for you to take that organization into your assignment as far as doing or quoting examples are concerned. And what you have to do is when you start your assignment, I would suggest that follow the tips in terms of what the task is asking you to do. One of the things the awarding body does is that it does not want to make the assignment submission taxing for the learner. That means you don't need to write pages and pages and pages and pages of evidence. What they will look at is the knowledge that you've gained from this unit is going to be tested when they ask you to complete certain tasks. And the assessments that they are going to ask you to write, would generally be broken down into 3 across all the kind of assignments in IT. Number 1, it would be asking you to make a presentation. Number 2, it could ask you to write a Word document. That means do a number of tasks by writing them out in a Word document, like a case study or an essay or something like that. And the third part would be, because it's a vocational qualification, it's a technical qualification, there would be some units which will ask you to produce a practical code or a practical output. In the case of website programming as a unit, you'd be asked to design a website on WordPress or Joomla or Drupal or Wix as a platform or any other platform that you have, and you need to create a few pages to be able to complete one of the tasks. Similarly, in the programming part of the assignment, it will require you to do a bit of programming, set a code, produce a code, and then show the output of that particular code as a program running. And in some units, it is going to be theoretical. So theoretical outputs would require you to produce a PowerPoint presentation or a Word document. So it is imperative that when you start doing the assignment, you don't just submit one Word document, but if it says here, create an induction presentation, that means it is asking you to do these tasks as PowerPoint presentation, right? That is something that you need to very clearly understand when you read the assignment. So it says you've been asked to produce an introduction to cybersecurity presentation for new staff joining the organization. So essentially, you're going to be looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, which are related to all the bullet points. Each bullet point is related to 1.1. The second one is 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. And they are going to be exactly the same that you see written here, right? And then the extension activities are always going to be merit and distinction. They'll be labeled separately. So if you wish to achieve merit, you will need to do all the passes. You will do all the merits which are there in all the tasks. That means if I show it to you here, assuming you want to do you want to get a merit in the assignment overall, you'll do all the passes across learning outcome 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you will do all the merits in all the learning outcomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So any merit opportunity here, obviously there is no merit. As you see, there is no merit, but you have to attempt this and this, and along with 1 and 1. That means then along with all the passes, if you met and all the merits you met, then you will get an overall grade, which is merit. So generally speaking, in an assignment, you would always find 3 opportunities for merit and 2 or 3 opportunities for distinction. Right? There will be some tasks wherein the merit and opportunity and distinction opportunity might not be there. But mentally, you should be prepared that if what grade I'm looking at achieving in this assignment. So if I'm looking at a pass, I will only attempt the pass tasks. If I'm looking at achieving merit, I'll do all the passes, plus I will do all the merit tasks. If you don't achieve one merit task, then your grade will still going to be an overall pass. If you decide that I want to achieve distinction, you will do every task which is given in the assignment brief, including extension activities wherever they are given, right? And if you do not attempt, then you will not have an opportunity to get feedback on them. So I'll explain this again. As a student, I want to submit this assignment. I want to pass this assignment. So mentally, I've decided that I only want to look at a pass. So I will do all the pass tasks. But Shaima decides that I want to achieve distinction. But in the first submission of the assignment that she does to the tutor for assessment, she only attempts pass task and the merit task. She hasn't even attempted the distinction task. There is no way that you will get an opportunity to, resubmit and resubmit with distinction, because that is Shaima being smart, wherein what she's going to do is she say, okay, let me get merit first, and then I will try for distinction, which would mean that it is unfair on the other students that Daniel decides takes a bit more time, and obviously, or Gertha decides takes a bit more time, and she attempts all the tasks. But what they do is they do not maybe meet the criteria, but the feedback opportunity allows the tutor to address these feedback. And because we see that you have actually attempted it, you're trying it, that is where your trial and your attempt will be rewarded, because you'll be allowed to get feedback, and that feedback would allow you to redress it, amend it, change it, and then submit it to achieve. But if you haven't attempted, you would not get a chance second time. Is that okay? Is that understood?
Yes,
just
sir.
like universities, right? If you submit an assignment without the higher grade tasks, you will not get an opportunity again to submit the task again, because you have now achieved a pass, and what you want to do is, I want to do a second attempt and I want to get a higher grade. No, that won't be allowed. But if you attempt everything in the first go, and even if you do not achieve the tasks, you will get feedback. But that will give you an opportunity to essentially attempt it again or add to it based on the feedback to achieve that higher grade. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah, to
Yes,
achieve
sir.
distinctive, I should first go to the merit and then go to the distinctive. Yeah.
No, okay, this is a good question. Let me also address this before we go further. What you are normally going to see is, in our discussions, I've only attempted the past discussions with you. And that is being done on purpose, because the merit and distinction tasks are not separate tasks. Sometimes students see this as separate tasks, but they are extensions. That is why it is written as extension activity. What that means is, you might be discussing the importance of cybersecurity here in 1.1, but we haven't discussed advantages and disadvantages, for example, go into a bit more detail. So 1M1 next to it, why is it 1M1 and what, not 2M1? Because this would look at picking up this criteria here and extend it further for you to look at, asking you to, let's say, do a bit of research and present that information. So this task is advantages of understanding hackers' mindset. So what we have discussed in 1.3 talks about is typical mindset of hackers. Now, what is it that mindset, what that mindset is, we are discussing in 1.3, but the extension activity merit is asking us to discuss just the advantages in a bit more detail. So what you have done here is, you've described the mindset of hackers. You might just stretch it like a rubber band and obviously just go and discuss a bit more by adding to it, and that will help you achieve the merit task also. Does it make sense? It's like saying, I'm running a marathon. My trainer is saying, okay, let's do 5K marathon first. But then he knows that I have the stamina to go to 6K. So he will say, okay, now that you've reached 5K, let's try and reach 6K as well, because I know you can stretch. So it is just an additional part by asking you to look at the task and maybe a different point within the task to be able to accomplish it.
So if I'm aiming for a distinction, I
You
should
would
first go
basically,
do the past. Yeah.
First you do the past tasks, and then you start addressing merit and distinctions.
Okay.
Is that okay? So they are not considered additional tasks. They are basically tasks which are going to ask you to discuss maybe a theoretical framework, ask you to give an example, or maybe look at underpinning the theory, or maybe asking to add another dimension of discussion of what you have already done in the past task. And in some cases, it will ask you for and showing an example of that particular task that you've, like, it's like saying, okay, I'm discussing pestle analysis or political environment, but then it says, for the merit activity, could you take up an example organization and explain how the political climate is affecting the business of that organization? So it is basically, you've discussed political climate and how it affects the business, but here it is saying, take a named organization, take a actual example of an organization to discuss this, and that will help you to, achieve merit. Is that okay? So what was the
Yes, sir.
main point? Sorry, go on, Daniel.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't saying anything. I was just affirming.
Yeah, go on. Ask your question. Sorry, I didn't understand.
Well, what I wanted to ask was, it doesn't have anything to do with this specifically, but how do you access the modal for the course?
All right, okay, that's fine. That's a good question. So let me bring that up very briefly. So if you log into the portal, have you got the logins for the portal?
No, from what I've checked.
All right, okay, let me just have a quick look. So the portal login is a website address called lms.ukversity.co.uk. And when you log into this portal, I'll check if you've been sent the passwords and login. What you'll do is go into the computing section, and in the computing section, that's the course, which is the short form of the course, ATHE Level 3 Diploma in Computing or Information Technology. When you click on this, it'll actually show you the entire course. Now, we have hidden some of the units in particular because we don't want you to get onto the difficult units to start with. And we have started off with this unit, which is in a yellow outline box called Introduction to Cybersecurity. And this has all the course material, including books, handouts, presentations, articles, journals, recorded lectures. They're all available here. Now, let's look at whether you're enrolled into the course or not. So you are actually enrolled into the course. It could be that the email that you would have received could have gone into your junk or spam folder. Let's have a quick look.
I managed to find the email. I have it, but when I click the www.lms.ukversity.co.uk link, it doesn't really work.
Okay, so if you are on your side right now and on the PC, then my suggestion would be to primarily go on to this link, which I will put in the chat. And when you are in the system, when you log in with the username and password, you should actually see only one course on your end, because that's the course that you are enrolled in. So when I click on the logo, I go back to the home screen. And let me just share only one screen for now, which might make it easier for you. So that's the browser screen. If I click back on the logo, it'll take me to the home page. And once you're logged in, it'll show you, if you scroll down, it'll show my courses. And I'm logged in as a teacher right now. I teach a number of courses. So obviously I have a lot of courses available. But on your side, on the home page itself, if you don't want to look at anything else, just click on the logo and scroll down your courses. You would only see one course here, ATHE Level 3 Diploma in Information and Computing and Information Technologies. And here there will be a yellow button underneath somewhere. It'll say enter this course. Now, because you're enrolled on that course, it'll allow you to get into that course. Just as an example I've got in right now for a nursing course, it'll show you the entire course content.
Yes, sir.
So are you able to do it now?
Yes, sir. I'm able to do it now.
Okay, and let me know when you're in the course and you're able to see the course. Have you gotten?
Yes, sir. I've gotten in.
All right, okay. And can you see the units?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. So they are not arranged in any particular order, but if you scroll down, there'll be some units which will be actually grayed out or passive. That means they are hidden. They are not active. But when you go down, you'll be able to see the Introduction to Cybersecurity unit, and that's the unit that we are discussing. So the assignment brief and how this content is arranged on Moodle is you'd always see the first document as the unit specification, which is what I've shown you offline, because I've got it as a document on my PC. And then the second document is always going to be the assignment brief, which is what we are discussing. And then subsequent documents in all the units that you'd see would be combination of books that we've bought and are recommended by the awarding body for you to access to be able to read these books. So these are recommended books for this particular unit. They are e-books, essentially 300, 400, 500 pages long, just like a normal book that you would get from a library. Okay, so there'll be at least 2 or 3 ebooks for every unit that you're going to study with us.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
And after the books, you'll have some useful websites if they've been, which I feel you need to, or other tutors feel that they're teaching those units that you need to access. And then after that, there could be some reports, there could be some, good articles or links to certain articles or report, and they would again be for additional reading. And after that, what you'll generally see is Learning Outcome 1, LO1 is normally short form for Learning Outcome 1. So it will be divided into presentations. Learning Outcome 1, Learning Outcome 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are 5 in this unit. And then each of these would also be supported by recorded sessions. Now, these recorded sessions are not updated. So the updated and the latest recording sessions, what we normally do is we send you the links on the WhatsApp group. So if you click on any of the presentation, they are the presentations that we normally go through in our discussions when we have these sessions. And towards the end, recordings of these latest sessions are passed on to you on the WhatsApp group. Okay. Today, we are going to discuss, and as we have already been doing, we are looking at discussing what is called the assignment brief. And this is also a presentation that I'm going to upload on Moodle. So you'll have it for your reference, and a copy of that recording will be shared with you in the WhatsApp group. Now, is that okay? Can I go forward on now? Can I move forward?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, now, so basically the two documents I wanted to show in the full screen was shown because if you pick up a unit spec and sometimes you pick up an assignment brief, there are two advantages and one disadvantage. Sometimes I find that I need to know what assignment and what evidence the assignment brief is asking. So sometimes students find it easier to use this as a unit specification. Because when I say, it says explain the importance of understanding cybersecurity, what do I need to include as evidence in this? If I scroll down in the indicative content, as you can see, importance of including or understanding cybersecurity, this is the content that needs to come into this task. And that would be, I can't go wrong with that because it is like a bit of a short tip which is being given in the indicative content to say, if this is a task, this is what you need to cover in this task to be able to create that evidence. So some students find it easier to use the unit specification to write the assignment. But some students find it easy because if I'm in your shoes and I want to be a bit smart, what I would do is I will follow the assignment brief because I don't need to cover all the bits which are given in the assessment, in the indicative content. I want to write less. I want to get the highest grades. So what I'll do is I'll follow what the assignment brief is asking me to do. And in such cases, excuse me, a bit of a scenario given and like it's breaking it down into a presentation here, first task, then it says keep your work, keep yourself safe online. It is asking you to create a small guide. Then it says draft a response to inquiries. So again, it is asking me to do different creation of different types of formats or evidences, which are going to be some details, some are going to be brief, some are going to be bullet points, some are going to be presentation, which is going to make my life easier as a student because I will be able to accomplish this unit quite easily. And then it says create a disaster recovery plan. Now, a plan could be a table, a plan could be a couple of paragraphs broken down into bullet points, and then towards the end you maybe give a table, and that would again be something that it makes it easier than writing pages and pages of evidence. And the last one says implement range of security measures. So again, it gives you a bit of a scenario. It says as an ITC manager, you're required to implement this. You must evidence installation and configuration of any of these and take some screenshots. So I don't need to actually write anything, but I will use my mobile phone and I'll show how two-factor authentication is enabled. And I'll take the screenshot video of my mobile phone, or I'll take screenshots of it and then include that in the Word document. And that is it, and I'm done. So doing an assignment is going to be fun because it is going to help you develop soft skills, sharpen up your IT skills. At the same time, it'll also challenge you to include things in the evidence as per what the awarding body or the assignment brief is asking you to create. And that is what actually happens when you work within an office or work for an employer or an organization. Nobody's going to ask you to ever write an assignment in your life when you start working for a company or an organization. So your boss might say, create minutes of the meeting. We are doing a meeting right now. Let's can you write the minutes of the meeting down? Can you summarize this report for me? Can you make a presentation on this particular topic, which we will have in a training discussion or a training session with our colleagues? It might give you practical ideas of how things are expected for when you work for an employer. So that is the bit that I wanted to explain primarily on the assignment brief and why you should look at these two documents when you start writing your assignment, because you have the full requirements in your hand. You know what the content is and you know what the task is. So you're able to write it correctly the first time, and you're able to complete it the first time rather than me having to do a lot of attempts to get it right. Now, in terms of our discussion today, this was all nonsense that we have discussed, if you ask me honestly. What I have done is I've used this assignment brief that you see on your screen, and I've converted it into a bit of a presentation that I want to take you through, but it will have the same things because I've copied and pasted that from the assignment brief into the presentation so we can have a meaningful discussion. Is that okay? Now, first things first, journal tips. When you do an assignment, there is an assignment declaration sheet that is there, which you need to create and sign and obviously send it across. Now, this is something which is available upon Moodle, and I'll quickly show that to you. Because this is the first discussion on assignment, I want it to be a bit detailed so that you would follow these tips through in doing other assignments with other tutors as well. Now, where do you find this assignment declaration? This is the declaration of originality, which is available in the course introduction on Moodle. This Word document that you can download. And the reason we have provided you this as a Word document is that you click on it, it will download locally to your PC or laptop or your Mac, and then you can fill it up electronically and just keep using it time and again by changing the name of the unit. And that would mean you would not need to fill this declaration up again and again. All you would do is have the soft copy of it, just change the name of the unit, attach it with the assignment when you are sending it back to us. Okay. So this bit you can also do and fill electronically. And if you go onto our website, when you're on the website, you scroll down to the bottom, which is the footer. And here is where you'll also have an assignment declaration sheet. As you can see, when you click on this one, this is an electronic version of the same sheet. Put your first name, last name, your email address, your registration number, what course you're actually studying, choose the course from here, and then click on this, put the date of submission from the calendar when you are submitting, and then you just sign it, sign your name here, and that would be acceptable as well.
So
okay.
This is the same as the declaration
as the Word document, yeah, it's the same. You don't need to fill both. You could use one and you can fill this up and it'll be easier, because I think we are online, we are trying to do away with paper and scanning and all that stuff. So it'll be easier for you to look at doing this online. And I would suggest that depending on your preference, you could submit this declaration. Now, I've already covered this, but I'll quickly take you through. What I wanted to show and explain in the assignment brief was that when you look at command verbs, it tells you some idea in terms of what is required in terms of evidence, how much is too much to write, how much is too less to write. So what we do is we define these command verbs into three categories: pass, merit, and distinction. And depending on, this is just an indicative guidance, you could always write more, or I would say not less, but more. So focus on the details, what the task is asking you to do. Whether it's a presentation, whether it's a Word document, whether it's a case study, whether it's, for example, producing a plan or a table, is it saying take a named organization? Those are the bits that you need to be careful about when you are studying the assignment brief, because if you do it descriptively without taking examples, putting in theory or showing us examples or applications of it, then your work would not meet the higher grade criteria. That is why focus on detail. The second part is command verbs, giving you some indicative content in terms of how much is too good to write. Make sure that you're able to do referencing. Now in referencing, we follow the Harvard referencing system, which is also called the author date style referencing system. So you have the last name of the author, like in my case, Singh. And if you're quoting me, then it'll be 2025 in brackets, and that would be the referencing that you would do. Now, there are no word limits, but we provide you what are called recommended word limit for the assignment. Right? And the reason why we give you recommended word limit is because your plagiarism and similarity, we don't want it to go over 20%. Now, one of the other things that you need to note is that we can use AI, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, lots of other softwares to essentially do research, study, but that cannot be just copied and pasted and brought into the assignments. Because at the end of the day, we will run a report on your submission, and that needs to comply with the guideline of less than 20%. So you can use it for research, but you need to paraphrase, write it in your own words when you are including that in the assignment. Now, for this particular unit, I would suggest that anything that you're writing over 4,500 words plus minus 10% is going to be a bit too much in terms of the assignment, in terms of word limit. Now, ATHE is good about this part is that they do not give you any word limit on the assignment, because in universities, when you study, what will happen is you would also have what is called a penalty. That means you have to stick to the word limit in which they're asking you to write the assignment, because again, it shows unfair advantage to learners who are not able to articulate or write in a certain word limit which has been described. So if you write 10,000 words, you'll be penalized. But if the assignment says 3,500 words, you have to write it in 3,500 words plus minus 10%. And plagiarism guidelines are also available on Moodle. Anything over 20% is not acceptable. But that is to say, this is also a big chunk because it means 1/5 of your work you can copy and paste, and that will be acceptable. I would not suggest that. I would say you should keep your similarity to the lowest possible, simply because this is a technique. This is I would say, a skill that you're picking up at level 3 to be able to write academically and write in third-party language, and obviously reference your work, give credit to the authors, publishers, or the people who have done the research and created that, and then write assignments skillfully. Last thing
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Regarding the word limit, you said it shouldn't exceed 4,500.
Yes.
Yeah, only for okay.
That is for this assignment only. If for computer programming assignment, you might even end up writing 2,000 words because some part of it has to be produced as a code.
Yes,
So
exactly.
word limits would vary, but generally speaking, if you take a benchmark or a ballpark, essentially, I would say assignments are normally between 3,500 to 5,500 words. Anything beyond that is going to be too much, or it's going to be too less. You won't be able to do just
3,500.
3,500 to 5,500 maximum. If you're going over 5,500, alarm bells should start ringing, because it should sound to you that I'm writing probably too much, I'm collating too much information which is not required.
Yeah.
And when you are looking at your assignment, my last suggestion to you would be, before we get into final detailing, is make sure you produce a formatted, proper formal structure of the assignment. It should look like a professional document. It should have a structure like a table of content. It should be having page numbers. You have written down the tasks very clearly, cutting and pasting or copying and pasting exactly as it is from the assignment brief. You're numbering your pages, you're numbering the tasks, you're adding references towards the end, or creating a bibliography, and the assignment is essentially looking like a professional formatted document. So generally speaking, what we do in that particular document is we normally look at, I will show you an assignment submitted by a student. It will obviously, in university at level 4 or level 5, when you study, there is a 5% mark for presentation as well, or 10% if you are producing a presentation in some task which is required. So you are able to get those marks in your bag, essentially very easily, because if you follow these guidelines, you'll be able to do so. So let's look at now the document in terms of what you're expected to do as far as this particular assignment is concerned. Now, there's a bit of a scenario which has been given. It says you've gained work employment within an ICT security department of an online clothing store. So it is giving you a company that you're working as an employee, as an ITC employee within an online clothing store company. The organization has 90 employees, multiple departments, and the ICT skills of employees, even for non-IT users, need to be at the basic and advanced level. So your manager has asked you to produce a presentation which is introducing cybersecurity, and this is going to be delivered jointly by you and your manager to the staff in all departments. Now, your presentation and information must include a lot of things. For example, it is giving you to say you need to be looking at talking about cyber security attacks. You need to be looking at developing a range of material. And also, you need to be able to answer queries as questions which will be raised by our colleagues when you're doing the training. And this would take a combination of presentation materials, supporting notes, and other documentation that are going to be produced. This is just giving you a bit of a background that, okay, this is what you are, this is what you do, and considering that in mind, start doing the tasks. Now, the first task is asking you to create a presentation. So what I would need to do in this case is that I would need to produce a presentation. And that presentation that I need to produce is going to be a couple of slides, covering each of these tasks. And because there are 5 tasks, it is something that I would say it will be fair to assume that I need to produce at least 20, I would say 15 minimum, or at least 20 slides to do justification for this task. And each of these slides that I create would also need to have some speaker notes along with it. So in terms of evidence, I would say create 15 to 20 PowerPoint slides, write 20 to 30 words as speaker notes in each of the slides, and then include reference slide towards the end. So this would be the required evidence in the case of this particular task, which is your task 1. And task 1 talks about 4 or 5 things, which is importance of understanding cybersecurity risks. How do we look at classification of those risks? What are the mindset of hackers? And then last but not the least, the different type of cyber attacks or cybersecurity attacks which can be done by these hackers. So this presentation, if I show you an example which has been produced by a student, is going to look like this. And then in some cases, what you could also do is obviously write up a bit of, I would say, say, for example, some explanation about the task as well. And that could be done in the form of what are called speaker notes. So let me show you this presentation for this task 1. And if you do not submit this as a task 1, which is required as a presentation, then what will happen is you will not be passing this task. So this is an example of a presentation produced by the student, which says Introduction to Cybersecurity for the Staff, task 1. There is some, speaker notes, and I've created this presentation as if I am explaining it to you. So what I'm going to speak for each of the slides, I've actually written down here as clues or tips for me that I need to speak this. And my session is going to cover things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are short words of the task which are given as assessment criteria 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. How is it the same? If I quickly show you the assignment brief, you would see straight away that this is what the assignment brief is actually saying. Explain importance of cybersecurity in an organization. So importance of cybersecurity has been taken by the student. How do you keep up to date with the new risks? This is what he's taken. Typical mindset of hackers, different type of malware, and then different types of attacks. If I take you back to the presentation, that is what the student has actually written on the slide. Here you go. 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. And then he goes into each of these points to explain by 3 or 4 slides. Importance of understanding cybersecurity. So it is important and crucial for everyone in the organization to understand what is cybersecurity, because it plays a very vital part in protecting sensitive data, ensuring integrity of our systems, and maintaining compliance with legal regulation. And that is what the verbatim underneath written here is, the speaker notes. So he covers this task by talking about what this means in terms of assessment criteria. Then he goes to the second one. Again, 2-3 slides to explain. Then he goes to the third one. Again, 2-3 slides to explain. And as you can see, the slides are beautifully designed. The learner, I can see, has taken a lot of time to create these slides. And he's done his research because he's writing the exact words which are required to cover these assessment criteria. Now, he's done a conclusion, but there's a problem in his presentation that he hasn't included any references of where this work has been taken from. This is something which is vitally important, because I know that he has done his work, but where has that work come from? I need to understand this very clearly. So I asked him to add those references, and that is what he's added at a later stage in the slide. This completes task 1. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Is that understood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will share this, presentation with you guys also on Moodle, just as an example. Task 1 sample. Okay. Now, there's another way I would show you how another student has actually produced the same work, but he has actually done it on a Word document, which is also acceptable. But I would prefer that you normally submit a PowerPoint slide. So what he's done is he's given it a nice structure to this document. He said his student name, first page is blank. Then he's created a table of contents. He's labeled them nicely by creating the content. Task 1 presentation, task 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see he's done all the tasks. Starts off with a bit of an introduction of how he's going to go about writing the assignment, explains it. This is a best practice. And then as you can see, what he's done is he's made the presentation, but he's posted screenshots of that presentation into the Word document by talking and covering through the slides. But he's done screenshots of it and he's put it here. And then underneath some of the slides, he's written a lot of detail, which is like explaining what he's writing on the slides. This is also acceptable. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right? So this part is also acceptable. He's done the references here, as you can see, which is fine. Now he moves on to task 2. So essentially, my suggestion is follow the assignment brief and ensure that you are actually following it to produce the output which has been asked for by the assignment. Now, that's how you would go about doing the tasks. Now, if I go here, that is the evidence required. I would suggest a PowerPoint presentation, 20-30 words in terms of speaker notes for each slide, and then 15 to 20 slides include the references towards the end. Now, for those of you who are looking at going into extension activities, it talks about explaining the advantages, understanding hackers' mindset. So obviously, this is to be produced not as a presentation. This could be additional slides that you could put, 2 or 3 slides, which is fine because it is a continuation to task 1 as per the assignment brief. And in some cases, some learners actually write this as a Word document because they would obviously have an advantages and disadvantages table. They might write the advantages and explain that in a bit more detail, write 2 or 3 advantages. And similarly, they could do this for the distinction task.
Yeah, regarding task 1 and the slides, how many words should we include in there, in the slides? Like, is it included or?
So generally speaking, if you look at presentations, they normally have, not more than 30 words per slide because you'll use bullet points or you'll write short paragraphs. And underneath the slide, you'll write the explanatory notes because if your intention is to explain what is mentioned on the slide, then that explanation is going to be something that you speak. You do not fill it on the slide. So you could write speaker notes under the slide. Like in this case, I have not written anything here, but I could add my notes here in the slide. And when you do submit the PowerPoint in the Word document, no PDFs, you have to submit it as the output required, PowerPoint as well as Word document. It can't be a PDF.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any questions in terms of this so far? How would you go about doing the assignment?
No.
Yeah, go on, Daniel.
Sir, I wanted to apologize for my abrupt disconnection earlier. The battery of my laptop died, so I had to reconnect it.
That's fine. I understood that. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Now, what we are looking at essentially here is you are able to address these tasks by doing them in a Word document. So task 1 was a presentation. Task 2, 3, 4, 5 are essentially all required as a Word document. So when you do submit your assignment, how are you going to submit your assignment to us? That is where you are going to submit the assignment, learnerwork@ukversity.co.uk. When you do submit the assignment here, you get an acknowledgement receipt automatically from this mailbox to say your work has been received, and you'll receive a feedback in 5 to 7 working days. And because I've taught this unit, and if you have any specific questions related where you are struggling to do the assignment or not able to get hold of the evidence, then my suggestion would be to essentially write me an email and I would essentially, come back to you with some additional information. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff. So what I'm going to do after this session is going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to upload this presentation that you see on your screen. I'm going to upload 2 samples for you to look at so that you have an idea in terms of how your output needs to be, how your assignment needs to be. So one is going to be that Word document which I showed you as a PDF, and the second is going to be this PowerPoint presentation which you have seen, so that you are able to at least have something visually, if you want to see and compare yourself with how you're producing and compiling the evidence. Okay.
Yeah.
And the assignment brief, and obviously the recording of this assignment brief is already on Moodle, and the recording of this session also I will make available, on the WhatsApp group.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then
Yeah,
later
thank you,
today, you hopefully, or by tomorrow morning, you will receive the schedule for the next unit that we're going to start from Monday. It might not be necessarily me teaching, but maybe another tutor. But the idea would be we'll be looking at starting a new unit. Now, my suggestion would be not to you, Daniel, but to Gartha and Shaima, because you're fresh with what you've studied. You know most of the things that we have covered in this unit. I would expect you to submit this assignment within 2 weeks, because if you leave it for long, what will happen is you will start forgetting things. You would need to revisit the recordings. You would need to go back to the slides. So while you're fresh with the material and the study that we have done, or the content that we've covered for discussing this unit, it is worthwhile for you to actually go ahead and attempt the assignment and submit within the 2-week period. Anything longer than that, you would need to revisit the material, and obviously it will take more time for you to be able to complete your work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, another point which I want to make, if you do end up using material which is given in my slides or this presentation slides that I've shown, then that will also be referenced. So in some cases, you will say, it'll say cybersecurity and comma 2025. If you have used specifically data from learning outcomes or specific slides, then, obviously referencing wise, you would put LO2 and, say 2025, but towards the bibliography or towards the end, when you create the details of where the material has come from, you're going to write, introduction to cybersecurity, learning outcome 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it is, then then you'll say slides 2 to 10, UK Versity. That's proper referencing that you'll do, even if you're using the material from the slides. Okay. It is a mandatory requirement that you should have at least 6 references in every assignment. Without references, your work would not be authentic. It will not be factual. It will not be original, because you can't just think of something yourself and you can just write it in the assignment. So it has to be something which is understandable, something which is genuine, something which is relatable to field of work or research which has been done and is acceptable. And that is what you're going to include in your evidence in the assignment.
Mr. Rahman, what is the difference between bibliography and referencing?
Very good question. So references tend to be pieces of work that you take from books, websites, journals, essentially electronic / non-electronic, or published work which has been created by scientists, authors, or people who have worked within that field. And when you do take their work up, you're going to not change the meaning or alter the meaning of it. You're going to copy the work as it is. And when you copy the work as it is and include it in your piece of work and submit it as an assignment, then what you do is you give credit to the author or the original, or the person who has actually originally created the work. And when you copy the text as it is, you put it in what is called inverted commas. And it could be, say, for example, Elon Musk wrote, and I quote, inverted commas, that as humans, we are multi-planet species. One of my assumptions is that people will colonize Mars by 2030. And that is an exact quote that I've taken from Elon Musk's interview, and I've quoted that in my assignment. So in such cases, you would give reference of Elon Musk and the conference or the paper or wherever he was speaking, and then you put that in the end in your document as a reference, because you've not altered in the meaning of it, changed the meaning, you've copied it as it is. That is where it is a reference. So reference normally comes from books, articles, journals or electronic published sources like websites.
Yeah.
Now, if I read a book or if I read a paragraph or if I read a chapter and understand it, and then I use it in my own words and write it in my work or quote it in my work, then in those cases, what I'm doing is I'm not using the exact text, but without altering the meaning of what the text or the chapter or the paragraph or the book actually quotes. I will use it and write it in my own words in my own assignment. That would be what is called paraphrasing. And when I do this as an activity, then at the end of my assignment, I need to list down a number of sources from which this information has come from. And the list of those sources, when it is compiled, will be called bibliography.
Okay.
Right? So the difference between referencing and bibliography is referencing tends to be when you're quoting exact text from a source. Bibliography tends to be when you're quoting and using that text, but you're paraphrasing and writing in your own words. But in order to give it and show that the work is authentic, you provide the source from which it has been taken. And that is what would be bibliography.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mhm.
Good stuff. Any other questions that you have?
No, sir.
Any questions at your end, Shaima?
No.
Any questions at your end, Gartha?
No, I'm okay. Everything was very clear.
Good stuff. So what I will do is, as I mentioned, I will provide these things to you just after the session. And hopefully you will also be getting the schedule later this evening or tomorrow morning for the next unit to start next week. And then once you have compiled your work, you can send it for the purposes of assessment, and then we will take it from there.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Good stuff. So thank you so much for joining in today, and hopefully enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good weekend. And I will hopefully see you next week.
Have a good weekend too, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman, very much.
Thank
all
you.
for
Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.